they have ensured themselves that, oh, that means there is no have-done effect here in the third experiment. And you can know in the third experiment, when left onto their own, people tend to form into informal groups we call it them as primary groups. I told you, like even you take your own classmates, unfortunately, you are the most affected souls with the COVID, but otherwise, you would have ended up maintaining maybe at least 20 primary groups within your two sections itself, A and B, right? Have you deciding you have your own norms, you would have set up a state group, district group, maybe based on caste also. Because see, there is nothing wrong in forming a primary group because that is part of our DNA. We have inherited this moving in groups. We have inherited from the monkeys and chimpanzees, right? We are derivatives of them. Right? We are not special. So we have inherited certain things. Like, for example, lion is a lone animal, right? These are social animals. So, tiger is also a. So, whereas dog, it is a dependent soul. Like it wants some support from some, like a domesticated. It can be easily domesticated. In fact, I would have. Like, how many of you read How to Get Rich article? Has anyone read that article? I recommended
Yes,
that.
you sent in mail. You sent in mail that one, sir.
Huh?
You sent
Yeah.
in mail.
What is profit and how to get rich?
Yes, sir. How countries?
Huh. So in that he was saying, unfortunately, African continent got all the kind of animals which can't be domesticated, like zebras, rhinoceros, then elephants. They are not so much domesticated. Whereas Asian people, most of them got very kind of good animals like horses, dogs, hens, which can be easily domesticated and which you very easily. In the sense, like a cow can give one baby in every 2 years, whereas an elephant take gestation period is 4 years. So like that, he was comparing, like how Africa, because of its geographic constraints, it could not develop, whereas Asia, from Vladivostok to till this Spain, it is a continuous longitudinal continent till Europe. So the migration is easy and everything is easy. So, so just like certain animals have certain characters, human beings also has this vastness to form into groups because of the evolutionary nature of man. Look at man evolution. Only when we moved in groups, our survivability has increased. So naturally, in the modern setup also, if when you join an organization, you inevitably join into certain groups. And the joining of your group, joining into a particular group, depends on your depending on the physical proximity. Like for example, before joining this college, you don't know each other, but now you have become friends because daily you are meeting either at the hostel or in the classroom. So that the daily interaction will automatically build some bondage, some friendly behavior between you. So here also in that bank wiring room, prior to transfer, they have randomly picked up around 14 people out of 20,000 people. Actually, they don't know each other before joining that bank wiring room experiment. But once they joined, They are automatically formed into groups. They have all certain norms, and since most of them are not happy with the management, so they decided that they will not produce more than 6,000 telephone relays per week. So with this passive observation, they have come to know that man is not an economic man. He is not an individual. He is a social animal. And sometimes to be part of that social network, sometimes he sacrifices his own, certain times he partially sacrifices his own individual interest to be part of the group. Are you getting it?
Yes, sir.
So, see, there may be exceptions everywhere, right? Some people like loneliness. It doesn't mean that everyone, but 90% of the people in the society are social animals. So they inevitably form into groups, and as a manager or as a leader, you have to channelize the working of these primary groups for greater good, like organizational well-being. Okay? Are you getting it?
Yes, sir.
So here, that is what I mean to say, that here what. So in fact, Hawthorne experiment, that's why I said Hawthorne experiments has created a paradigm shift. Paradigm shift means giving a total new understanding to the subject of management. Prior to Hawthorne experiments, people were thinking that the basic unit of any organization is only individuals. So, and every assumption about individual is like everyone is motivated by money. So you connect that earning of money with the amount of work he does for the organization. So that's how, like Taylor, he said, like, first of all, you scientifically decide the amount of work per day. What is the fair day's work of a worker? And now, once that standard is set up, if somebody is able to exceed that standard, you pay him some extra money so that there is an incentive for him to exert more work, contribute more work. But unfortunately, by 1920s, through Hawthorne experiments, they have found that 2 plus 2 is never 4. Sometimes it can be 3, but sometimes it can even be 5 or 6. 2 plus 2 can be 6 also, depending on how these primary groups are working and how their norms are in line with the organizational norms. Are you getting it?
Yes, sir.
So, see, we are not blaming anybody here. We are only trying to see the nature of man. Okay? So sometimes there is a misunderstanding in certain leaders and managers that try to reduce, break the groupism of people. See, as per social psychologists, breaking the groups deliberately will create more chaos than order. Anyway, we'll come to that point while discussing the repercussions of these Hawthorne experiments in our further slides. So, shall we start? Okay. You got the clarity?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So here, so what are the add-ons of Hawthorne experiments? First of all, they have come to know about the Hawthorne effect. That is the effect of being observed. So people will change their behavior. They are alter their behavior. So once they feel that they are part of an experiment, and then another derivative of this concept of like primary group, secondary group, informal organization structure were introduced in the management terminology because of this happened. Because till that point, people were thinking that man is an individual. But after Hawthorne experiments, particularly after the third experiment, they have found that man is no more a isolated human being. In fact, if you, as I told you, to punish Nelson Mandela, South African government during that time, they have put him in isolation cell. But being a very, very strong man of strong willpower, he could overcome that isolation and led that South Africa to freedom from white people. And then here, another beautiful outcome of Hawthorne experiments is like what are the characteristics of a leader and how a leader will have, right? And then another thing is man is a social animal and he follows the norms of the social group he is associated with. Sometimes to be part of the group, he will sometimes sacrifice his individual gain also to be accepted by others, right? Just like I told you now, like about you take your own example. You have come here only to study, nothing else. But you end up doing, except studying, you do something else, right? You involve in maybe in good activities or bad activities. See, depending on like which social group you join here, right? Which primary group you join here, right? So those who are people like who may be preparing for a CAT, you may be part of that group, and so your world is different. Then, like if you are preparing for IAS, then your social group is different. Then chess group, cricket, football, or state group, district group. So you tend to fall into certain groups, and to be part of that group, sometimes you may be sacrificing your own study, right? So be aware of it. Okay. Now let us move on to the next. So what are the characters of a primary group? So this is the basic unit of an organization, as I have told you, and it consists of 5 to 7 people. Why it is confined to 5 to 7 people is because every member of a primary group should interact at least once in a day with each other. So there is a physical and a mental limitation, man. Right? So that's why even in that bank wiring room experiment, those 12 people, actually 14 people, 6 in one workbench and another 6 are in another workbench, and 2 people were kept as quality control inspectors to test whether they have done the soldering properly or not. Funny thing is, those 2 inspectors were kicked out of these 2 primary groups because naturally they are supervising on their work now, so they didn't allow them to join. And the psychological status of those 2 guys who were outcasted because of the basic nature of the job, so their psychological status is not so good, because basically it is an urge in every human being to be part of a group. And whoever is out of the group, his social status is now not so good, and his psychological status is also not so good. So, and apart from these 14 people, there are 2 observers who are representatives of the our 2 processors, whose role is only to note down both the individual as well as group output, so that they can decide their individual earnings as well as group bonus, right? So that is the case, and each group develop its own unwritten norms. So somebody is joking, these primary groups, they have unwritten norms, just like we have discussed now. Like if somebody is trying to produce more, he is called as a red buster. They used to call with a different nickname so that that fellow will come back to sticking to the unwritten norms that they have kept. Sometimes those unwritten norms can be either they may be working against the organizational interest, or maybe they may be working for the organizational interest. depending on how the organization responds to their requests. So here, so somebody is joking, like these unwritten norms means it is like British Constitution. See, even now, even though Britons have ruled over India, but still they don't have a written constitution. They have a what you call, like whenever there is a issue, they will just sort it out at the parliament level, and also sometimes they refer to the previous situations and then accordingly, and occasionally they go for what you call plebiscite or whatever public opinion, just like to decide on the Brexit. They went for national wide voting, and finally all the people, the majority people have said like we will come out of European Union. See, that kind of plebiscite kind of thing we don't do in India because we have a constitutional thing here, and we don't quite often go for plebiscite kind of things. So here, the fourth point is a person can be part of many groups, and his role
For
in
an
each group.
island, it's easy, but for a peninsula, it's not so easy.
What is that?
For an island, it might be easy, but for peninsula like India, it can't be done also, even if we have that constitution.
No, you see, each country has its own peculiar circumstances. You see, whole Britain is again split into three uh, independent countries: Scotland, England, and Wales. So don't think like they are happily coexisting with each other. There is always some kind of sarcastic jokes on Scottish people. There is again Scottish people who put sarcastic, and in fact there was again a referendum recently whether Scotland should be part of Britain or not, England or not. What happened? Scottish people said like we will be with you only. Again they have done it through plebiscite or public opinion. So, yeah, see, because like you see, the Britain people, they have found that they have take lot of refugees from Syria. They thought like the workforce in Britain, they were feeling threatened. So that's why even though Europe itself has accepted refugees, a lot of refugees from Syria and other Gulf countries, but Britain is not ready to do that because they have their own problems in accepting foreigners. So that's why they have come out of the Brexit. So each country has its own dynamics, and how it does is again it depends on the ground situations. I don't know whether I have answered your question.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Uh, So here, what we see is that these primary groups will lead to formation of informal organization structures. So this is a very important point. That is, finally, these primary groups will lead to formation of informal organization structures. That means, in the design of organization structure, whatever you do, it is a formal organization structure. But the implicit assumption that has gone into design of organ structure is man is an individual and he will perform his role as per the norms or as per the organizational manual or as per the policy decided by the organization. But in reality, because man is a social animal and he inevitably he will form into primary groups. Once these primary groups form, there you see in every organization, there is also an informal organization structure working under formal organization structure. So actually, again, there is a debate whether the formation of informal organization structure is good or bad for an organization. That is decided based on how these primary groups have aligned their norms in line with the organization concept. Like suppose if these primary groups have kept their norms, which is against the organizational norms, then that organization will not work as expected, just like in the hackathon experiments. Since these primary groups were not happy with the management. See, actually, AT&T is a very enlightened management. They were providing schooling, everything, but still there is some kind of discontent. Because basically, the management attitude is almost similar to Taylor. We will decide, you do, and no more discussion. There was no mutual understanding with regard to like accepting or satisfying the what do you call the some at least taking them into confidence, taking their suggestions in improving the workplace. They were not doing that. So it is just like as indifferent attitude as Taylor has shown to his workers. That's why even Taylor was kicked out from the Bethlehem Steel Company because he used to sarcastically remark saying that even though he is a genius, but at the same time he is not a kind of guy who can take people along with him. He used to sarcastically joke with the workers, na, when you hang your hat outside, you hang your brain. So what happened? Slowly there is a kind of communication gap between workers and Taylor, and finally all the workers walked into management and said like, unless you kick this guy out, we will not work. And finally, Taylor has to settle as a consultant for various companies on how to improve productivity. See, this kind of situation has never arisen for Henry Fayol because he's basically an organization man. So anyway, so as long as the primary groups norms are in line with the organizational norms, formation of informal organization structure is okay. In fact, if the norms are matching, informal organization structures work more efficiently than formal organization structures. That is the beauty of informal organization structures. Because a formal organization structure has a lot of inbuilt bureaucracy, red tape. Because for everything you have to take approvals and then you have to go through standard channels of communication, that leads to a lot of delays. But if you have an informal organization structure within the formal organization structure, sometimes you work based on the faith of the other guys request. Say, for example, so I'm a professor in mechanical department. I need, say, some electronic device like oscilloscope from electronics department. If I have to formally get that oscilloscope from electronics lab, what I have to do is I have to write a letter to our head, and our head will send a letter to electronics head, and the electronics head will forward that letter to so that lab in charge. But see, people normally they don't take risk with the strangers. So if because myself, see if that faculty in charge he doesn't know personally, then he said like, sir, I have some work with this. I can't share this. Finally, the answer may come as no. But whereas if I myself and that lab in charge, we regularly meet in say a staff club. What I will do, Arey Baba, like our students want for some time that oscilloscope, why don't you spare? No, let them come tomorrow. Let them pick the equipment. As soon as you finish this their work, you send that equipment back. So because Myself and that guy, we are part of a primary group and we are also working for the organization. I'm requesting him to make the student do his job, right? So in that way, like what a formal organ structure could not do, an informal organ structure can do. It can reduce the bureaucracy or red tape, which is inherently present in a formal organ structure. Right? Just 1 minute. Huh? See, I am in a class. What is it urgent? Huh? ఓహో! చంద్రమౌళమ్మ నేను 10కి నేను అయిపోద్దమ్మా క్లాసు. చెప్పు. అది సిమెన్స్ ల్యాబ్‌లోనే పెట్టేయండమ్మా. అయితే నేను నా రూమ్‌లోనే ఉన్నా. నేను క్లాస్ తీసుకుంటా. రాము. యాహ్! ఆ! ఏంటమ్మా? ఎవరు? కాఫీ తీసుకొస్తాను. సో హియర్ చంద్రమౌళిలో వస్తాడు. అబ్బాయికి నా రూమ్ చూపించాలి. కింద మన నెట్వర్కింగ్ చేస్తాడు. So that is what we were discussing, that so sometimes informal organ structures will work more efficiently than a formal organ structure as long as these primary groups norms are in line with the organization. So sometimes if you don't want to work now, what I will do, see, even though I will send a formal request, so you say no. Informal, I'll inform that guy, because see, if I'm not interested in it, I can tell that guy like, no, see, అది తర్వాత నేనమాట. So here, that is what I mean to say, that informal organ structures can make or break a formal organization structure, depending on how the norms of these primary groups are being evolved. Okay. So normally these groups are formed due to physical proximity. As I told you, in the bank wiring room, they are formed into two groups. 6 is one in group, another in another group, because basically they work on the daily, they meet 8 hours during working days on the same bench. So naturally they have formed into a primary group with their own norms. Now coming to informal organ structures. So an informal organ structure is a social structure of the organization, right? As opposed to the formal structure. Okay. So it establishes how an organ functions from a practical standpoint. Like this is formal organ structure is normally for the namesake, but what actually is working in any organization is the informal organ structure. So that's why second point has come. It establishes how an organ functions from a practical standpoint. Okay. Then the informal organization can work in concurrence with the formal organization structure, parallel with it or against it. So depending on how the norms of these primary groups are kept. It's primarily a social structure made up of the sum total of social norms, relationships, interactions that affect how an organization works. So it is an informal one. So what are the social norms that are there? So relationships, interactions, right? The structure of a informal is usually quite different from its formal counterpart. Its structure is usually fluid and rather flat. So why this statement has come is its structure is usually fluid and rather flat. It is because uh,
It keeps
see
changing.
sometimes the CEO and the a worker can be part of the same primary group because they go a weekend to a particular officers club to play bridge tournament, or they are part of a cricket team. So what happens is sometimes now people request this foreman or manager. See, anyway, you meet the boss at that meeting now. Why don't you pass on my request to you, to him? Because the formal organ structure might take a lot of time. So it can sometimes short circuit the whole structure. So, and its structure is fluid and rather flat. So if the CEO changes, again a new kind of informal organ structure can crop up, can mix. So decisions are often made collectively rather than unilaterally by one leader. All right, because see, like each whatever the norms. So cohesion is often established through trust and reciprocity between members. See, for example, I told you, like in that bank wiring room experiment, if one worker is feeling a bit depressed for some reason because of some house issue, he says like, Baba, today I don't have mood to work. Then, as a group, they used to decide whether they are going to stick to that 6,000 norm or maybe reduce that output on that day to only 5,500. All right. So, or sometimes they say like, anyway, we will help you out without uh, harming your individual income. So there is a reciprocity because in one day one fellow may be a bit ill, the other day in some other time some other people, and they were there is a lot of mutual help in these primary groups. That cohesion, that trust is built up. So for example, like you also what you do, suppose you one of your like as a group you decide to go to say Lagan movie or some Dhruva. What you do, like even though you on that day you may have a mood to study, but because your group has requested you to come to the movie, you put your books aside and then join them, right? So that is so on some day some other fellow might request again you sacrifice your, or sometimes you yourself you will request, let us go for a movie for a change of mood. So that is a kind of see because why people go for primary groups is because they feel a sense of security to be part of the group. Because the group gives a lot of social security, where a formal organization structure may not give. And every the it gives a some kind of social status also. Every primary group being part of a particular group itself is a social status sometimes. And as you closely follow the norms of the group, your chance of becoming the leader of that particular primary group increases. So there is a place for everybody in a primary. One fellow may be a simple silent member, another may be active member, another may be sub leader or leader. See, there is again a sense of security for being part of a group, right? So that is, and there is a mutual trust, a reciprocity by being part of a a primary group. And then, so anyway, one of the other outcomes of, see, there are three add-ons after expansion. One is, it is about formation of primary groups. People have come to know that there is inevitably in every ocean, the basic unit of organization is not individual, it is primary groups. Then they have come to know about how these primary groups behave. So characteristics of primary group. And then from these primary groups, an informal organization structure evolves. And the third outcome is, like, from this, people have come to know about how a leader will have. So let us see, like, from that Hampton experiment, what can we deduce about the characteristics of a leader? So the first is, leadership is always in terms of situations, right? So that means leaders are always, like, see, what happened is, during World War, Winston Churchill has successfully led UK in to be part of the Allied forces, and finally they have defeated these fascist countries like Japan, Italy, and Germany. Right? After the World War, there was a general election in UK. Finally, what happened is, people have instead of Winston Churchill, they said, like, he was defeated in the elections. They thought Churchill is good for during wartime, not for peacetime. Because during peacetime, they said, like, we need a different leader. So that's why this first statement has come. Leadership is always in terms of situations. Okay, so because of there is a lot of excess happened during emergency time, in the next general elections, people have rejected Indira Gandhi and they have chosen Janata Party, the old Janata Party, that is led by Jay Prakash Narayan from Bihar, right? Morarji Desai, and those people have come. So they thought, like, so it is always in terms of situation. If the situation changes, people change the leader. And then a good leader will operate through the medium of primary groups. So this is like, if you want to lead people, so you talk through the medium of primary groups. Because for a leader to individually track each and every people, it is very difficult. See, like you take people, like most of the leaders, what they do, they deal with through the medium of primary groups. Like every chief minister, he will always operate through the leaders of the, like the MLAs. MLAs in turn, they will deal with their people through their mandal presidents or village presidents, right? So it is always, the moment you bypass them, and if you try to say, for example, during what you call, when there was a fight between Ramarao and Chandrababu Naidu, finally MLAs have, even though most of the MLAs have got elected because of the charisma of N.T. Ramarao, but when it comes to choosing their leader, all of them have come to Chandrababu Naidu because he is a good leader in that sense, like he was operating through the medium of primary groups. Whereas N.T. Ramarao thought, like, the MLAs can be, they are Kachra people, and he has a feeling that anyway they have come, they got elected because of his charisma, and he was not caring them. So it got hurt. It hurted their pride. And finally, they have chosen Chandrababu Naidu instead of N.T. Ramarao. And that's how, like, Chandrababu Naidu come into the, become chief minister, ousting N.T. Ramarao. Right? Anyway, subsequently he died. But what I mean to say is, a leader will operate only through the medium of primary groups. So similarly, like when you join an organization as an employee, what you have to do is you first of all you should be aware of how many informal groups are there, primary groups. Who are their informal leaders, and how they have kept their norms? Are they which of the primary groups are troublemakers? So for those primary groups, you have to individually talk to the informal leader of those primary groups and take them into confidence, and then you have to lead your department. Okay, so that is how normally a good leader will do. So a leader is the one who will stick to the norms of the group he is leading, right? As long as because we said like this is nothing but the putting in a different format the first point, because anyway leader is in terms of situations only. So sometimes in bad situations people have develop a different kind of norms rather than when they are in a peaceful time. A leader is mostly democratic, lead from the front. He is neither autocratic nor laissez-faire. So an autocratic leader may not survive for a long time. Autocratic means dictator. And similarly, those who give a lot of free hand without giving them any kind of sense of direction, that is also bad. So mostly a leader is mostly democratic and he will lead it from the front. So normally sometimes maybe autocratic leadership also might work in a theory X kind of situation where people are not what do you call
Lazy and unmotivated.
see
Always need
similarly
pushing.
so whereas laissez-faire might work where people are most of them are self-actualized. So they need not be given explicit do this, do that kind of. Say for example, if you take a very most innovative laboratory on the earth, Bell Laboratories. Anyway, now they have almost closed that laboratory. But during its peak time, they were registering 10 patents per day on the average, and most of their patents are world changing, or they have created a paradigm shift in terms of technology. Like whether you take invention of semiconductor transistor or statistical quality control techniques or this laser, then C language, C++ language, Unix operating system, all these have come from that great laboratory. So, and in fact, like so here, so you have to sometimes take an autocratic role if your crowd is not so self-actualized. You may have to you have to always dictate terms, right? So and anyway, the other one is he's the one with a lot of integrity and good communicator, and he should be charismatic and has a bit of halo effect. Halo effect means like in most of the religious calendars, they put some white background. So, so like to indirectly hint he is a god, godly like. All right. So most of the cine heroes they have this halo effect. So if like Chiranjeevi or Amitabh Bachchan or somebody or Shah Rukh Khan, like they have that halo effect. People love them. Okay. So anyway, so these are the characters of leader. So part of these, some of these points have come out directly from the Hampton experiments. Okay. Now let us move on to the last function of management. So this helps to check errors in order to take corrective actions. So we are moving from directing function to control function, which is the last one. So control in management includes setting standards, measuring actual performance, and taking corrective action in decision making during planning function. So that is a kind of feedback loop. You are completing the feedback loop, right? So that you incorporate the corrective action while making the subsequent plans, or during the planning period itself, you take certain midterm course corrections, right? Then minimize deviation from standards and ensure. So you have to minimize the deviation from standards and ensure that the stated goals are achieved in a desired manner. And then function of the system that adjusts operations as needed to achieve the plan or maintain variations from system objective within allowable limits. So that as needed to achieve the plan or to maintain variations from the system objectives within allowable limits. So you have some like tolerance limits in a physical sense. So within that tolerance band, if you are able to uh, make the you are able to implement a plan, that is fine. So control function completes the feedback loop in the activities of the. So they whatever feedback you receive in the during control function, that either you use it to change the plan within this planning period itself, or you may take this inputs to plan subsequent planning periods for the subsequent planning periods. So now the last topic of this general management is this is a comparison of American versus Japanese management. So like American management, normally they have a very short term uh, like employment, like whereas Japanese have a uh, lifetime employment kind of thing. And then whereas the decision making is individualistic, whereas Japanese follow collective decision making. And here individual is responsibility, whereas they take a collective responsibility. See, if you closely observe, I think basically Japanese have understood that there is an inevitable formation of primary groups in any organization. So you try to motivate people in terms of groups, not individuals. Whereas here in uh, American case, even though people like even though hackathon experiments have happened in America, it is really the Japanese who have implemented that. Whereas Americans still operate at they are still thinking the basic unit of organization is individual. So that's why you see like individual responsibility, individual decision making, rapid evaluation and promotion, explicit control mechanisms, specialized career path, right? The guy who works in marketing department, he will continue to work in marketing department, he will die as a marketing guy. Whereas that kind of situation is not there in Japanese. It is non-specialized career path. Sometimes, in fact, like people are they are allowed to work in different departments so that they have a bird's eye view of how the organization works. That is the philosophy of Japanese. Segmented concern for employee as a person, holistic concern for employee as a person. So holistic means they will try to counsel him if he has some issue with regard to his family, that kind of attitude. So then there is a theory Z, modified American, like long-term employment. Now Americans are slowly changing to adopt employability, collective decision making, individual responsibility, then slow evaluation and promotion, implicit, informal control with explicit, formalized measures. It is a kind of hybrid approach of both theory and American and Japanese. And then moderately specialized career paths, holistic concern, including family, right? So this is how like uh, 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 the American say, like for example, somebody says since it is individual decision making is fast in American system, whereas since they take collective decision, so decision making is very slow in Japan. But when it comes to implementation is slow in American situation. Whereas in Japanese, implementation is very fast because already enough discussion has happened on what they are going to do. So
There won't be disagreement afterwards with the group.
Yeah. See, because here individual is taking without taking the people around him into confidence. So naturally, sometimes there is a chance of misunderstanding the chief's or boss decision. So whereas here in Japanese, they may take a lot of time to take a decision, but once the decision is taken, implementation is fast, right? So there is a collective responsibility and see rapid evaluation and promotion. See, in American situation, if you perform well now, they quickly promote. And see, hiring and firing is very fast in American situation. See, even if they want to fire you, they fire you with giving only 10 or 15 days time. They say like, and in fact, like they will say in a very polite way, see, you are a great guy, but unfortunately, we are not in a position to utilize your services. They will issue that pink slip. So, but whereas here there is almost only what you call lifetime employment. So here here promotions are very slow, but and because there is a slow evaluation. So here and most of the time they follow implicit control mechanisms. Whereas here in American case, explicit control mechanisms means like your production target is like this, you have to deliver goods like this, that kind of target fixing. And whereas implicit control mechanisms means sometimes the workers themselves fix their production quotas and tell the management like we are going to deliver this. And so there is no day-to-day monitoring of the activities of workers by the supervisor in the case of Japanese management, because already most of the workers are operating in a self-actualization mode in Japanese case. They know what is their role in keeping the organization in a high esteem. And in fact, their bosses are so proactive that in case of crisis, they are prepared to sacrifice their part of their salary to keep these workers on the job. That kind of attitude you don't see in neither in Indian situation or in American situation. So that's why there is so much esprit de corps, self-actualization in Japan, and that's why uh, they love their bosses, and there is a lifetime employment guarantee, right? As long as they work. So this is how the differences between Japanese and American management. So with this, we complete our discussion on general management. So if you have quick uh, doubts, we can clear, and then in the next class we will start the our production management chapter.
Sir, implicit control means like production will ask how much you want to do, what are the conditions your batchmates or
Yeah.
group mates are. It
As a
will
group,
ask
they have what is
and
called quality circles. So in quality circles, it is like a primary group, informal primary group. They will, in fact, here in Japanese kind of situation, there is no bossism. So, like, whereas Americans still operate in a military format where boss is always right. But in Japan kind of situation, mainly the boss are facilitators. They see like what are the difficulties of the workers to achieve the targets. Whether I can do something to help them out to give a quality product. So that is the approach.
sir,
So,
this method will contradict some of the Maslow's principles, no, sir?
hmm,
This will violate some of the Maslow's principles. Maslow, I'm saying, sorry.
well, this is not violate. It doesn't violate. See, most of the workers and bosses, they have they get elevated to self-actualization. Self-actualization means he is no more bothered about power position. He's very focused on how I can make the organization excellent.
Sorry, sir. Henry Fowles.
Huh?
I told the name. Henry Fowles principles are like there should be someone responsible, right?
Hmm? What you say?
Henry Fowles principles are there, no, sir. Henry Fowles, 14 principles of management.
See, for example, this kind of thinking has come from again an American management guru by name Edward Deming. I told you now, once Americans have bombed Japan, they have bombed that Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Americans were feeling guilty. So what they did now, they want to help Japan to recover from that disaster. So they started pumping lot of money as well as resources into the Japanese economy. And one of those resources is sending management consultants into to help the Japanese industry to come out of their situation. Fortunately or unfortunately, Americans have selected such a beautiful management consultants in the form of Edward Deming and Juran. And these two guys, they tell, see, anyway, our people are not. And one of the recommendations given by Edward, don't try to pull out an individual and either for rewarding him or punishing him. You can give rewards and punishment for a group so that there is a bit of bonding and you are indirectly contributing to change the norms of that primary group so that it is in line with the organizational norm. And now everyone is working for a greater purpose of how to later slowly they have moved to excellence. So here both boss as well as the subordinates are in a same frequency. They have cultivated this kind of feeling over a say period of say maybe it took almost 2 decades. So that's why uh, people say that is what we call it as total quality management. Total quality management means where people are extremely tuned to give excellence in whatever they do, and they were no more worried about how the other guy is getting incentive. In fact, like there is no, as far as possible, Japanese have almost removed incentive schemes because that is going to create chaos rather than order. It might have worked for Taylor for some time.
Sir, so Japanese believed in group effort rather than competitive effort. Like,
Yes. Because it was given by Deming himself told Japanese never introduce merit rating in an organization because if you pull a particular employee as best employee of the year or best employee of the month, from then onwards, people stop cooperating with that guy. They think that out of our efforts, this guy is getting the credit. But instead, what people like what Deming said is that's why he said, in fact, Edward Deming has come to this kind of approach to management because when Hampton experiments were happening, Edward Deming's boss was working on a different problem, that is statistical quality control techniques in the same Hampton plant. He realized that never pull out an individual and praise him. Because basically man is a social animal, identify what kind of social setup this fellow is with there. As a group, you either praise or modify their norms. Okay?
okay, sir, that sounds reasonable because individually, if one person grows 10%, it is far less than a group of 100 people each growing 2%.
Hmm. Yeah. See, that is what I see. Either publicly praising or punishing an individual is always dangerous, right? But but as a group, you tackle them. In fact, that is simpler rather than tackling at an individual level. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you. Well, then we will, probably we will send a word through Kalyan about when your minor can happen. Okay.
Yes, sir. Sir, can you share the PPTs for mine?
Yeah. I will share it. Yeah, sure.
Okay.